are in the very southern end of the Pfalz, on the border with Alsace in a village called Schweigen. And the thing with Schweigen is it is really on the border with Alsace. And so below that, Alsace is France, right? So they're on the border, Germany and France. They've got 60% of their grapes actually on the French side of the border, which makes things a little complicated. You know, fortunately, they have been grandfathered in or treated in to be able to call their wine German wine, which is really great. Although Fritz Jr. loves to really push his limits there, and he will sometimes bottle or label something in a way that he shouldn't. And he's an equal opportunity, but when he needs to be, because he'll piss off the Germans and he'll piss off the French. He doesn't mind, which is fine. It's his wine. They've been there in that region for 400 years making wine. And so for him, and I really had to have him like spell it out for me last year. I'm like, I've studied German wine law, blah, blah, blah. What do I think I know? How are you making this wine that comes from this place and you're able to label it here? But history tells us that border has gone back and forth a lot of times. They've been there for 400 years. And so we can draw a line down the center of this room and we're still in the same place, right? So the line for him is really arbitrary. They have been farming over there for hundreds of years. Becker is practicing biodynamic. They're never going to go get a certification because for them it's just a marketing ploy, right? He's like, we've been doing this for 400 years, which is where a lot of my issues with the natural wine movement come in, because like, don't tell me that someone that's been doing the exact same farming for 400 years is not natural. Like, please don't tell me that. But I try not to. I try not to get on my soapbox for that. But if you have an account where you need to lead with like, ooh, natural, blah, 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 I'm not telling you that you talk like that. But this is an example of a biodynamic producer, and these wines are clean, right? These wines are crisp and clean and palatable to a wider range of consumers, really and truly. And the label is sort of a nod to that because he was told that these grapes would never ripen, and that he was just going to have sour grapes. And so he put a fox in the grapes on the label, and it's a nod to the Aesop's fable that the fox is in the vineyard, he finally gets the grapes, and he says, well, these grapes are sour, I didn't want them anyway, right? And so that's kind of their, how do I say this nicely? It's their nod. That's a nice way to say it. The label is there kind of like, look what we did. Because now, of course we know, Pinot Noir is absolutely vital in the Pfalz, and it certainly is in Alsace as well, right? And this idea that no one thought these grapes would ripen, you know, Fritz Sr. was really ahead of his time when it came to Pinot Noir. What you have in your glass, though, is Chardonnay. We can go here. So this is Fritz Jr. This was his whole lineup. We did an entire lineup of Grauburgunder last year. So from entry to like the very expensive, but the like most intense oaked Pinot Gris I've ever had in my life. I've never had anything like that. It's a very unctuous, very unusual wine. But they are focused on the Burgundian grapes, right? So Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc. And Fritz interned in Burgundy along with a number of other places around the world, and is very focused on, I know they make a little bit of Riesling, but we don't see it. It's mostly Burgundian grapes. Do you want to go to the next slide? And they were one of the first people to plant Chardonnay. So Germans are very excited about Chardonnay. I feel like we have a little bit of Chardonnay fatigue here in the United States. So people are either really into their specific California brands, or it's that ABC rule, which is anything but Chardonnay, right? Which is why it's fun to show them a German Chardonnay, because they have no context for it, and this is not, and God bless it, because people are drinking it, this is not KJ Vintners Reserve, right? I love that wine, because you know what, if people are buying that much of it and drinking it, good for you, but this is so different than that wine, right? It's
2x4.
Yes, yes, exactly, extra butter, please. This is very lifted, more mineral driven. There is some oak here, but he says it's not a lot. I think it's roughly like 12 to 15% new oak on this. And I think it shows up for me both on the nose and a little less on the palate. It feels more integrated to me on the palate, but mineral driven, more of a Burgundian, maybe Chablisian style when we talk about the acid profile for sure. But for people that are wanting to, what? You could get the acid a lot on that. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, in a world that's warming, Burgundy is getting very warm and it's getting very expensive. Let's just be serious about that. This offers a profile that is maybe a little bit more food friendly and possibly a little bit more consumer friendly from what I'm seeing these days. And it is not a Burgundian price, right? It's crisp, it's refreshing, it's easy drinking. It's got that tiny bit of oak for those people that only think Chardonnay can have oak, but it's not offensive to the people that want an unoaked Chardonnay. So we're kind of like in the middle of everywhere. Yeah.